Hi everybody, and welcome to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And my next project, which is the Tamiya 1/72nd scale Mitsubishi A6M2b Zero Fighter Zeke. This kit number 60782, looks like it came out in 2012. It was new tool in 2012 as the A6M5, and then apparently some new parts were added to make it into an A6M2b, which is this one. And this is a Pearl Harbor time frame aircraft. So before I dig into the box and all that, I want to send a special thanks to Ben Brandis, my buddy in South Carolina, for sending me this kit. Just out of the blue, he sent me this kit and said build it. So Ben, thanks a bunch. I really appreciate it. He's a really great guy, and not just because he sent me a kit, he just is a great dude. We stay in contact a lot. He's fun to talk to, and just all around good person. But back to the kit. On this kit, I plan on just building it straight out of the box, and I'm not going to do a step-by-step or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try and make it a build where I look at the contents of the box, I do the construction and the paint, and very little weathering, because it's supposed to be a newish aircraft during the Pearl Harbor time frame. So I'm going to try and do it all in one video. I'm not going to do a big old long drawn out series like I've been doing. I want to keep it condensed, and I just want to build this model, enjoy it without any of the added pressure of doing a step-by-step kind of thing like the kits I've done in the past. Okay, let's take a look at the box contents. Typical box, got some samples on the side of the color schemes you can use and all that. The instructions, I'm not going to go through all of them because they're, to me, instructions. It's this weird fold-out business, but it's pretty concise. Also comes with this cool background information pamphlet. Shows, I like these illustrations on the bottom here. It shows like the differences between, say, the 2B, the 3, the 5 or M5, and so on. Comes in Japanese, German, English, French. So anyway, that's kind of cool. Just gives you a little information there. Kind of a nice addition. Then we have some decals here. Now, real quick, I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to be using these decals right here. I'll be using the other ones, like the numbers and stuff, but like for the stripes and for the larger decals, I'm going to be using, I'm going to be masking those off and painting them, because to me decals can be kind of thick, and I want this to turn out good, so that's what I'm going to do. Clear parts, you have the option of having closed canopy or an open canopy. And I'm going to be doing the open canopy because I have a figure to put in it. I'll get more into that later. As for the parts themselves, you've got the cowling here. I'm not going to go in detail over these parts, but I am going to show you some of the detail, more of the detail parts here. You got the engine, which, for a 1/72nd scale engine, that's pretty nice. Landing gear, cockpit parts, all that. So that's looking pretty good. So what I want to talk about, and then there's some poly sleeves for the, I'm guessing for the prop. But I want you to take note of the detail on this thing. The panel lines, I guess some manufacturers can have some really heavy engraved panel lines on 1/72nd scale kits, and these are like really to scale, look really good, so no complaints there. So just a quick, before I get started, just a quick note on 1/72nd scale aircraft. I have not built a 1/72nd scale aircraft that I can remember. Now, I may have done when I was a youngster, like maybe junior high, so back in the mid-late 70s. I may have built 1/72 scale kits, or maybe even earlier, but I don't remember. And I've never built Japanese aircraft. It's always been U.S. and German aircraft, so this is a new one for me. So that's pretty much it in the box. So I'm going to dig in, start working on it, may touch base a little bit and see how far I've gotten. But again, I want to keep this into a single video and try not to make it too long. So I'll come back in a few and we'll see what I've got done so far. Okay, here's where it sits. I've got the cockpit done. Used the XF71 cockpit green, Imperial Japanese Navy. Turned out really nice. The decal worked well for the seat belt. It's so small, even though it's not really textured or anything, it looks good. Adds a lot to the seat, I think. Went together good. I didn't use the decals on the instrument panel because it's so small and you're not going to be able to see it in the cockpit. I decided instead of going through the headache, I just painted the dials individually and highlighted them a little bit. Same with all the sides here. Painted the inside of the fuselage, inside the cockpit area. I added all the details, sprayed it with the primed it, and then sprayed it with the XF71, and then painted the details, the individual details. So that's all done. Mixed up according to the Tamiya instructions, X13 and X25, which is X13 is metallic blue, X25 is clear green, and mixed up this Aotaki or whatever color that primer is. Sprayed a base of gloss primer, Vallejo gloss primer. Then I used Vallejo acrylic metal color aluminum for a base, as per suggestions by a lot of people building Japanese aircraft, and then sprayed that color mix on here. And I like the way it looks. Looks pretty cool. Also did the engine. That was pretty easy. Painted that up with the silver as well, or the aluminum, and then did a black wash to kind of highlight the detail, give it a little oily look, and then that color again, the Aotaki or whatever, on the front here. Can't remember what it's called. So I'm ready to do some more assembly. And the next thing to assemble is the fuselage, and you do that first and then install the cockpit. So I'll use my usual method, do a section at a time to make sure everything's lined up, and then get it all sanded and cleaned up, and we'll come back later and see how it looks. Okay, here we are now. So I started painting the main airframe, and here it is thus far. And as you can see, I'm using Tamiya XF76, which is gray-green Imperial Japanese Navy color for the exterior. I really like the color of it, but as you can see, it's got a little bit of a sheen to it as opposed to the ultra flat that the XF series has. There's the drop tank there, same thing. And what I did is I took these two things right here and mixed up my paint in a small Tamiya bottle. One of these types of bottles here. I bought it from somewhere, I don't remember where, but I got a number of these to make up custom colors and mixes and stuff. So what I did is I used 1 part color to 1 part X22 gloss clear, and then 2 parts thinner to make the mix, and it makes it nice. It makes it, with the 2 parts thinner, it makes it pretty thin enough that it sprays really well, but gives decent coverage without having to layer it too much. But it also gives it a little bit of a sheen, so it's not so dead flat, which should aid in weathering, especially washes, panel line washes and stuff like that. So Once it dries up, then I can check it out. I've also got the cowling. I think I showed that in a previous segment, but I added just ever so faint bit of blue to that. You know, then the landing gear. I did those on these piece of sprue here to make them easier to handle, because where I cut them off is where they go into the actual into the bottom of the aircraft. And what I did is I got some, this isn't it, but I got Edward masks for this kit to mask it off, to make it easier to paint. I was going to make my own masks. I do that when I can, but on this one it just wasn't going to happen. It was just a bit too small for what I'm used to working with. So there's that. So I'll let all that dry up, then I can start doing some more assembly of some of the parts, and and start thinking about doing just a little bit of weathering. I'm not going to do it too heavy, because from what I've read, these particular aircraft were, you know, pretty much brand new, coming off the carrier, going to Pearl Harbor, so they weren't really weathered and beat up looking. I'll do probably a little bit of panel line wash, and then some smoke, but I still have to, I'm going to paint the rising sun emblems on here, and then instead of using the decals, and then I'll use, you know, the rest of the decals and paint what I need to paint with that. And then once I get all that in there, then I can seal it if I need to, and I will be ready to start doing some weathering and get close to being done with it. Alright, so I've got this much done. The paint is on there. Now I want to start working on the decals, and I mentioned before in other videos that Tamiya decals, although they are very good and they work, they're a bit too thick. Now on this 1/72nd scale aircraft, I'm thinking they'd really be noticeably thick. So what I'm going to do, I have my caliper here, and I am going to make templates of these circles here, Hinomarus or whatever they're called, and make templates, and I'm going to spray them. I've also early on I determined that I wanted to use the Scheme B, which is Carrier Soryu, lead ship of Carrier Division 2, Lieutenant Fusada Iida, Air Superiority Force, 2nd Strike Unit. That's the one I want to do. So that calls for these decals with the blue. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to paint these as well. I'm going to stay using the decals because, again, they're pretty thick. And for this one here that has this placard on it, what I'll do is I'll just carefully cut that and put it on top of the painted stripe, and it should look fine. I don't mind if it has an edge and a ridge around that, because, you know, it is looks like a placard that's been attached or something, so that'll be okay. This here, I'll just trim these letters out really close and put those in between the blue stripes that I paint. Well, alrighty then, here we go. This is where it sits. I've got the insignia painted on there, and then I also got the blue painted on the rudder and on the fuselage. So here's the color that it's supposed to be, and that's the color it is. It might be a little bit light, but it's fairly close, and it's close enough for me. Looking at it on the camera here, like just looking at my iPhone screen, it looks fairly close. but I'm stoked with it. It looks good. It's not for contest. It's not for like complete 100% accuracy or any of that stuff. Just trying to get as close as I can. I possibly could have put a little bit more green in it. I did add a little bit of green because it was way too like sky blue, and there's just a little bit of a greenish cast when I compare it to the decal. So I think that's close enough. So with that, I think that pretty well takes care of all of the paint. So the next part I'm ready to do is install the rest of the parts, which would be the landing gear, the drop tank, the cowling, and the prop and the wheels. And that's all the construction that needs to be done. And then I can start thinking about weathering it. So I think I'm going to call it quits on this video because it's getting don't want to get it too lengthy for the type of video I want to do. So I'm going to end it here with the final paint. And next time when I come back, I'll start doing some decals, weathering, and stuff like that. And I'll just kind of keep you filled in on how that is going. So thanks for following along here with the Japanese 0 and 1/72nd scale by Tamiya. And until next time, I will see you all later.